us these moments that look chaotic, but in the midst of chaos, he gives us something extremely beautiful. Tonight is going to be a little bit different than our normal Tuesday nights, and I thank you for your commitment to being a part of something that God has made beautiful. I pray that what we see tonight forever etches something in our hearts, and we leave here better than we came in. Through a very tragic situation that happened in our city, God gave me a gift, and he blessed my life beyond what I could have asked or thought. In the midst of one of the ugliest things, he brought forth something extremely beautiful. He gave me friends. He gave me a man that I now look to as a mentor. And the other day he kind of got at me, and we were having a very kind, gentle conversation, and I was listening to his warm, wonderful voice. And he says, "Bishop, listen, we got a problem here." I'm like, "Whoa, what happened?" We're just having a good conversation. He says, "We got a problem." He says, "Either I'm going to be Dr. Godbee and you're going to be Bishop Godbee, or you're going to be Ron and I'm going to be Bob." And I said, "Okay, cool. How about you be Bob and I'll be Ron?" And he's a man that I look to for wisdom and direction. I had the privilege of sitting with him the other day and having lunch. Man, his words comfort, and they bring peace, and they bring life. And you're going to hear from him a little bit later on. But one day while we were talking, he says, "You've got to meet my rabbi." And so I'm talking to this old Jewish doctor, and he's telling me, "You got to meet my rabbi." I'm like, "Why would I want to meet your rabbi?" I mean, I'm just being honest. I'm like, "Why would I want to meet your rabbi?" Because, I mean, you know, you're an old Jewish doctor. You probably got an old Jewish rabbi. How are you that much alike? He's like, "No, you don't understand. You really got to meet my rabbi. Y'all are so much alike." So in my mind, you know, I've got things made up a certain way, and I'm like, "Okay, this will be interesting." And so he says, "Let me set it up, and you guys just go out to lunch or something." I'm like, "Okay, cool. This is going to be interesting." And so we interact through email, and we plan a lunch date. And so he shows up, and this guy walks in, and it was literally the presence of God walking into my life. A man that I would count a privilege and an honor to know for the rest of my days. He walked in, and I never wanted him to walk out. He's my brother. And literally my brother walked into my life. And man, as we sat at lunch, we talked and we laughed, and I'm like, "This dude is so cool. Thanks, Bob, for hooking me up with the Jewish rabbi." Life has not been the same. I mean, since I've been in Durham, I'm very relational now. I just haven't had a friend. In Detroit, I had friends. One thing that I haven't had is just a friend. Somebody that I can share my fears, my struggles, challenges, with somebody that I could be me with. And so as we began to develop a relationship, it came about for us to have an opportunity to go to Israel. And we're going to talk a little bit about that experience tonight. He's an amazing man. He's an amazing husband, an amazing father. He's just that deal. And I pray tonight that you hear something from his heart that reaches your heart. And I pray tonight that as we talk, you see something in this moment that challenges you. You see something that reconstitutes your image of individuals, and that you see things through different lenses, and you hear things through different filters. And so it's my honor for Rabbi Daniel Greyber to be with us tonight. He's going to come, we're going to share this platform and share our hearts share our tears, share our laughter, and share our experience. And prayerfully from this moment, we will all leave out committed to being better people. I want you, if you can, to stand on your feet, and I want you to give a rousing round of applause to our brother and our friend, Rabbi Daniel Greyber. I'm sorry. Please be seated. I introduced you wrong. This is Bishop. That's Rabbi Godbee, right? Bishop, what's up, Bishop? So we worked out a deal that he's the newly elected Bishop of the River Church. And Bethel, what you don't understand is I'm your new rabbi.
Now, can we have the whole music and choir?
Welcome to your new Shabbat service. We're going to run it for you guys. Y'all just pay for it. We're going to run it. My wife said, yeah. So this is what Saturday is going to look like in Bethel.
Well, you do really? It's so beautiful. It's so beautiful.
You're the man. And I love you. You're my brother. And I'm grateful for you. Let's start out with your book. Joseph.
Can I, before the book, I gotta say, the only thing I could think of as you were talking is I don't feel worthy for everything that you're saying. This is an extraordinary person. This is an extraordinary soul, and it's me who's blessed to be here. And I feel very lucky we were blessed.
Yeah, definitely, man. We must have did something right somewhere to get each other. I've been reading your book, and you guys are going to see some pictures behind us. But I've been reading your book, and in between snot and tears, because it is so profoundly moving. And in between, literally, just crying my eyes out, because sometimes I can't even read through the tears as I'm reading it. I got to a section about friends, and it is the section where your good friend transitioned. And I read your words, and your words have such weight, and it reveals your heart about friendship. And to read this book, it was a revelation of how you view and what you see as the value of friendship. And so to be called your friend after reading this book, it's my honor. We were brought together under some very difficult circumstances. Before we get into that, Joseph, bring me a book, please. If there's anybody in here who's dealing with grief, let me see. This book is a game changer. I'm not just saying it because I know the dude who wrote it. I'm saying it because the words packed in these pages are life-changing. It'll take you through a process of grief, and as he states, he's not trying to tell you how to grieve. But to read this, yesterday would have been my dad's birthday. And you and I shared a common experience. Our dads died around the same time. And so I'm still daily, people don't understand the process and dealing with this. And just the time in opening your book, reading it, it lifted so much off my life. And so I told him, I said, man, you gotta bring some books tonight. And so if there's anybody in here that's been dealing with grief, can you just stand quickly? Pastor, thank you. Boy, if you could just come, and if I can't get, if I don't have enough for all of you, I promise I will get more for you by the end of the week. Pastor Tom, please come. It's my honor to give this to you all tonight, to give you a gift. Francina just lost her husband. Sister Mandy just lost her son. My dear brother, I don't know what your grief is. Sister Curtis just lost her husband. And Sister Melissa just lost her husband. Sweet message to you. This is a game changer. And tonight, it's my pleasure to give you this gift. Brother Richardson, let me give this to you. Just lost his daughter. I want to show you how purposeful God is and how He gives us gifts and how timely He is. And your being here tonight is not just about the circumstances that brought us together, but it's a greater, far more broad picture. But let's just talk about what brought us together. So it was a situation that happened in our city. And can you just share with our congregation what that was?
Briefly, there was a resolution or a statement from the City Council that wanted to address the problem of militarized policing. And the first thing that I want to say is that that is something that deeply concerns me. I have a tremendous respect for police, but I also know that there's a lot of justice that happens, and our police forces need to be well trained. We need to invest in them as people, and we don't want to see our police forces become militarized, become armies in and of themselves. And that's something that there's a lot of common ground on. For reasons that, at best, I don't understand, the people who put forward a petition accused, held responsible Israel and some training that takes place there between the Israeli police and police departments in the United States for the militarization of police. And the language that was used, I want to be accurate, was held responsible for the terrorizing of Black and brown communities. And, you know, one of our high school seniors spoke at this meeting, and he said, there are deep race problems in this country that I care about. Those race problems go a long ways back and are a lot older than the state of Israel, and certainly than this relationship. And you know, the Jewish community, in one way, we feel very blessed for what we've been able to achieve. In other ways, we still know the sting of anti-Semitism. And something that happens with Jews, unfortunately, is that we are accused of being the source of whatever problems there are in society. So if there's disparity in wealth, it's because of Jews. And if there's lack of security, it's because all these things, and we end up being accused of things that are not our responsibility. And so this was a stinging moment. The statement that ended up being made singled out Israel of every country in the world for prohibiting any sort of relationships, police relationships, between the city of Durham and Israel. And it took what could have been a moment of unity and turned it into a moment of division. Soon after that, and I'm not saying these were connected, but our experience soon after that, there were flyers all over Duke campus from white supremacists. There's been of late more swastikas found on Duke campus. I don't know if you heard about this, but on the bridge on East Campus, where there was a beautiful memorial for what happened at Tree of Life in Pittsburgh, somebody put a swastika on that very sign. And those are, again, I'm not trying to connect those two things, but to say that our community experienced that sting of insecurity in what's happening. And so I think we came together to talk about how do we move this forward in a way that doesn't demonize Israel and that doesn't demonize our community, but how can we move together in a productive way, because we care about making Durham a safer place for everyone, and we want to have things be right and be just.
And that was a very ugly moment in the life of our city, and for leadership to espouse such divisive rhetoric that was responsible, I believe, for igniting or at least emboldening and empowering individuals to move in such a way. You all have received bomb threats. You have received, like you said, these divisive statements littering your campuses, and you all have literally been terrorized as a group of people as a result of what I believe the reckless actions of powers to be who are called to care for our entire city. They represent not just a polarized demographic, but they represent all of the citizens of Durham and all those who enter and frequent this city. And those statements weren't reflective of that. And so we felt obligated to come alongside the Jewish community to stand against this, because as minority groups, I believe that we have a responsibility to stand together, because we are better together. And so when we had the opportunity to connect, we took advantage of what we believe was an injustice that was being done in our city. And no matter who was propagating it, what skin color was propagating this, we saw something that could not live in the life of our city. This is the city of medicine. And so it should be a place that heals. It should be a place that brings us together. It should be a place that remedies the things that ail us. But we found ourselves in a very precarious predicament. But again, from that came something extremely beautiful. It brought our relationship about and gave us an opportunity to work together, which then opened up an opportunity for us to participate in what is called the Interfaith Partners for Peace initiative in Jerusalem. And so behind us you see some of the sites that we went to. This is from the Church of the Nativity. This is where Jesus Christ was born. Before we get into all of that, let's just talk about our coming together in Israel. And what did that mean? What did it look like to you? What were your preconceived notions?
I have to be honest, and I told this to the group when we got there, that as strange as it may seem, before my wife and I got to Durham, we lived for a year in Israel, and I've lived for 3 years of my life in Israel, and it's a part of my life, and I've been there before. And so the truth is that when I knew I was going with you, and I was excited to spend time with you, but I really just sort of thought that what it was going to be is another trip to Israel. Oh, okay, I'll go and I'll see the sites, maybe visit some Christian sites, and that'll be interesting. But I wasn't prepared, and I think if I had any expectations, it was just that it would be kind of a normal thing, or something that I already knew about, and maybe I would be, and if I'm honest, I think I was thinking a little bit arrogantly. Maybe I'll, show my friend, Bishop Godbee around Israel, and it was very different. And the learning that we did, and the sharing that we did was something I'm going to remember for my life.
Yeah, it was something, and you and I shared this. For me, it was a daunting task on many different levels. I've been invited to Israel in number of times, and I have rejected the opportunity to go. And the reason that is I've committed my life to the events that took place on those grounds. And one bad experience could possibly alter my entire faith base for which I built my life off of. And so I knew that when I went, it had to be a God-given moment. It had to be something that would not just be a moment of tourism, because I didn't want to get caught up in this spiritual Disneyland type thing. I needed it to be impactful, powerful. And so, you're a cool dude, and I like you.
You keep saying that.
I'm trying to
And my wife is going, who's he talking to?
I tried to find him some Yeezys, but finding a pair of 13 Yeezys is a very difficult task. So I've been on a journey.
You may take more than shoes.
Nah, bro, I'm telling you, you got it, man. You're a rock star in Jerusalem, man. We just walk around Jerusalem. Everybody's like, Rabbi. I'm like, dude, you're the man. I've been a rock star. And you weren't a rock star. See, he's not going to tell you he was what is the equivalent to an Olympic swimmer. So the Israeli Games that are the equivalent of the United States Olympic Games is held there in Israel. So he told me that he was the rabbi for it, but he never told me that he participated in it and was a gold medalist swimmer. And so he's the man. He's a rock star.
It was 1993. I'm still skating on that.
You lived it off the wave.
But I did it once.
You lived it off the wave, bro. Right, man. Do you bring out the medal every now and then to put it on each other?
I put it on before I came tonight, just so I feel a little bit.
You probably got it on under your shirt. Don't right. You feeling yourself right now, right? And so man, I wanted it to be something significant, and it was more than anything I could have bargained and asked for. So as you mentioned, it was a roller coaster ride. It was mentally exhausting. It was informational overload. It was just all that on steroids. So let's start. So we get there. We go to in east side of Detroit language from University of Detroit, where I learned religious studies and philosophy. It was called Capernaum. Y'all don't call it Capernaum. What is it called? What's the proper pronunciation?
No. We didn't. Capernaum was up in the Galilee. You're thinking of Caesarea.
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 So for me, it's Caesarea. For you, it's Caesarea. You get the Hebrew.
Yeah.
See, he's got
that. I should help with.
That you can help with. Amen. And so we went to Caesarea, right?
But can I back you up for a second?
Sure.
So I want to. But you are, I think you're being kind, which you always are. But for me, part of how I knew that this was going to be a different trip is I got on the bus. I met the group there and got on the bus, and at some point,
because rabbis come from Italy.
My mom
Bishops come from Durham. Rabbis come from Italy. He was hanging out in Italy, and he met us in Jerusalem. I'm just telling all your business. I'm sorry.
No, that's
I got to draw a line.
It's my mom. But you told me that that insecurity, that you and each of the African American men who were part of the group were pulled aside for extra security screening. And I had so many feelings in that moment. I had a feeling of, I think in the moment I may have even tried to, not mansplain it, but maybe white-splain it or something. He's
my new white card.
Or Israel-splaining, I don't know.
See, going, I didn't have him, so they took me through hell and high water. Coming back, I was with him, and they let me right on through. So from now on, he's my new white card.
So I think I tried to explain that, and the truth is that Israel has serious security issues. Okay, I flew from London. I went from Italy to London, visited my cousin. But when I flew El Al, now if you ever go and you fly El Al, first of all, you'll see that there's armed soldiers before you even get to the ticket area. Okay, and there's an extra security process that is that's intense, and it's intense. I'll say I'm a white Jewish rabbi from the United States, and they still ask me lots of questions that make me nervous. And then you always go through on El Al flights. You go through a secondary screening, right? And when I was in Florence, when I went to the synagogue there were 5 armed guards, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. I mean, armed, like really armed, machine guns. And that's just the reality of what it is for Jews in Florence, and it's the reality of what it is for the airline, for the Jewish state, right? So there are real issues, but the security issues have nothing to do with African Americans in the United States.
So
part of me wanted to explain to you, well, don't worry about it, whatever. But I needed my learning started in that moment because I needed to sit with that experience and to know, to feel this conflict that something that had happened to you that I was ashamed of, or that it hurt me because I wanted that experience to be different and better for you. And I knew that from that moment I knew the trip. I said, this is going to be a different trip.
Yeah, but and we've had these conversations. For me, it was normal because I'm a black man from the east side of Detroit. Getting grilled is nothing that's abnormal to me. Being profiled is not abnormal. And I think that was what was so surreal about this trip is being a black man in America is like being a black man in Israel, which raised a lot of feelings. And we saw that through our group. People don't really understand how emotionally intense these moments were. And it got really heated a lot of times because we spoke some real truths about all of our experiences. And here you all are. You are constantly being profiled. You're constantly being targeted, if you will. What does that feel like? I know what it feels like for me as a black man. What does it feel like to be hated because you're Jewish? Just because of the kippah that you wear on your head, someone immediately sizes you up as the enemy. What does it feel?
One thing that we talked about on the trip is, I can take the kippah off, right? And so there is a part of the experience that I just need to acknowledge is different. That I have the capacity to blend in and to fly below the radar. It's an interesting, but for me, I wear the kippah, and I want to say, a lot of the time, I feel very blessed in the United States. Not all over the United States, but in a lot of places, people ask questions. They just say, what is that called? Oh, I've never seen somebody where are you Jewish? Then they find out I'm a rabbi. It's like, oh, okay. And they start lining up the questions. But there's also, I'll give you an example. When I go into when I'm in a restaurant and I have bad service, okay? Just objectively, the service is bad. I do ask myself, okay, I'm wearing a kippah, right? If I don't leave a good tip, right, to what extent is that person going to say, oh, they're Jewish? Right? Those questions are always there, but I think something that you and I share is a sense that ultimately we have to be who we are, and we have to walk through the world, and the people who have problems with it, When we need to stand up for ourselves, then we will. But most of the time, I just want to surround myself with people who are filled with love and who can see and acknowledge me for who I am.
And you and I made a pact and a covenant on this trip. Because, again, anytime you're around rabbinical scholars and pretty affluent African-American pastors, we like to speak to hear ourselves talk. And there was a lot of that going on. And I looked over at you and I said, let's make an agreement. I will discuss my faith with you, but I will never debate it with you. Because I'm not here to change you, and don't be here to change me. So I'm not here to make you a Christian. You're not here to make me a Jew. We're here to discover who we are as Christian and Jew. Not to convert, but to understand. And so I kept telling people, I'm not here to have these conversations. I'm here to understand who you are as a Jew. And hopefully you're here to understand who I am as an African-American Christian pastor. And so that was a pact we made. How necessary is that for us to want to understand each other without needing to change each other?
I think, I think it's important on a couple of different levels. I can say that for Jews, there is a long history, and part of what we discussed on the trip is that a lot of the history is actually not between the African American Christian community and the Jewish community, but more our experience of white European Christianity. But there is a long history of wanting to convert Jews, and sort of people seeing us and saying, well, we need to bring you to Jesus, and if not, then you're definitely going to go to hell, and all those things that we've heard before. And so there is a certain defensiveness, that I think comes up, and this type of relationship is a real gift. First of all, religiously for the Jewish community. I think it's historically, it's something new, and we feel such a blessing to be alive. So we both saw Hamilton, so that song about, how good is it to be alive in this moment, just started over my head. But also personally, one of the things that I said to you is, look, I want our friendship to be about, not the fact that you are an African American pastor. I of course acknowledge, as you said to me, your blackness, right? And he said to me, I'm from the east side of Detroit, okay? I'm not worried about people forgetting that I'm black, right? That I want to, I think it's just at a human level to be with another person and to say, my task isn't to try to make you something, it's to understand you and just be with you. And there was a moment, one of the leaders of the trip was Pastor Chris Harris from Chicago, where he really taught me something, where he showed me, like literally he said, sometimes it's just important to take a walk across the room and to stand next to someone and to sit in their pain and to sit and acknowledge this is your experience and not to try to talk about it. And that was a real gift for me.
So this picture here, you were
we could pause that,
yeah,
right? Go back.
You were with me when I was baptized in the Jordan. Again, these are the places that are the impetus and the beginnings of my faith. These are the waters that my Lord and Savior baptized and the heavens opened and God spoke and said, "This is my beloved Son, in whom I will please hear ye him." And we shared that. I mean, it wasn't just my moment. You shared it with me. I felt as if you felt as much about that moment as I did. What gave you that level of empathy to where you could feel what I felt in it?
Look, this was a gift for me. I think part of the reason it was a gift is that, I was, what we were saying before, baptism, Judaism has something like it. It's actually called the mikvah, right? Where we immerse in living waters. But it's not a Jewish ceremony, but I understand. Well, I thought I understood its power, and then I was just present with you, and you were with the other pastors on the trip, and each of you did a little bit differently, and each of you did a little the same. But you asked me what gave me the empathy, and I want to turn it back to you and say that you invited me into that moment.
And then I shared a moment with you at Yad Vashem. So talk about that and explain to everyone what Yad Vashem is.
So Yad Vashem is the Israel's Holocaust Museum. And it's a place where actually each foreign leader who visits Israel goes and lays a wreath, but we did a lot more. We went through the museum. And I'll just, it tells the story of the Holocaust. I have to tell you, on CNN, I saw a recent, I think it was a poll that came out today that showed something like only one in 8 people in Europe, am I getting this right, has heard of the Holocaust. Or it's I may not have got the exact number right, but this poll came out today, literally in Europe, where this happened 75 years ago. There's almost total ignorance of what happened. And so the museum is there to tell the story and to document and to say forever to hateful people who say that this was some sort of hoax, or to say this is what happened. And for me, one of the most powerful moments, I know that you're thinking of a moment later, when as usually happens to me at these things, I broke down and I just lost it because of the enormity of what was lost. There is a room called the Hall of Names, and it's 30 feet high, and it's all the way around, and there are notebooks, and every notebook has 800 or 1,000 names in it or more, and it's filled with notebook after notebook after notebook, and every one of those names is somebody who was murdered. And but early on in the museum, there was a moment where a group of us stopped in one of the exhibits, and we looked at a picture of 3 or 4 Hasidic Jews who had been lynched. And I've seen that picture before. I've never stood next to my African-American brother and looked at that picture. And I want to ask you, what was that like for you?
Yeah, man. Again, it took my emotions in a million different directions. But it really aligned the human experience and really showed how the depths of depravity has been experienced by both of our communities. To know that both of us have people who have hanged from trees, but yet there are people who can still divide us and separate us. And here this moment brought us together, huddled in tears, because it was a shared experience, a shared tragedy. something that one should never have had to be a part of, but yet to understand that we both had to deal with the outcomes of this.
And I remember saying to you, because you said to me, never again. And I remember feeling so held and supported and lifted up in that moment. And there is a uniqueness to what happened in the Holocaust that should never be diminished. And Elie Wiesel once talked about how the purpose of that memory cannot just be so that that never happens to the Jewish people again. It has to be a memory that also shines out into the world and says and calls upon people of conscience to say, we have to work together so that this sort of human suffering is never inflicted again, and that these sources of evil are blotted out in the world. And that sort of partnership for me is something that I came back so committed to from our trip together.
And that's, for me, the same. It concretized something in me that said that we have to partner to assure that our children and our grandchildren and our great-grandchildren can only view this as a part of history, and that it's never part of their present reality. And what devastates me is the current events that we see going through the landscape of America. You know, as we sit here and fates are being decided in Mississippi and people are being supported who obviously support a separatist and racist agenda, it says that if we don't come together, that never again can't be concretized. It can only be concretized through us coming together and committing to one another that we have to stand against racism, we have to stand against injustice, we have to stand against inequities and disparities that are creating these chasms that are causing the same exact temperature and climate that we were witness to when we walked through the Yad Vashem. It was like history is repeating itself. The same divisive rhetoric that we're hearing from Hitler are things that we're hearing from our own politicians and our leaders. And if leaders of faith don't stand together, what good is our faith?
And, you know, I think part of where we get the strength to do that, and part of what I want to say to this holy community, I know you hit the jackpot with the bishop.
Amen, brother.
You did. I don't need to tell you that, but part of my hope, I'm so glad that some of the members of Bethel are here also, and this is going to be out. I think part of what helped us was that shared experience, was not trying to explain away each other, but listening. Me listening to your experience and listening and observing the experience without trying to change it and without trying to get in and make it this or that. It's one of the reasons that I'm so passionate about people coming to Israel. People think about Israel and the Palestinian conflict as very, flat issue, and it's this versus that or whatever. And if you come and you have the experience, then you can start to step into it. But here at home, my hope is that our communities can come together and number one, do important work. But I think the basis of that is going to be just understanding each other's experiences, beginning to where maybe we can. I've dreamed about this. Maybe we can do a trip to DC together for our congregations where we spend one day at the Holocaust Memorial and another day at the Amazing Museum, which is just for African American history. Right? Well, just those things where we're together and we understand how important it is, how there is shared history, and how we need to stand together to bring more of God's light into the world.
Yeah, and I talked with my youth pastors and every one of my leadership team so that we can galvanize that commitment, so that our youth can come together, that they can have dialogue, and we can understand each other in every facet of how we do ministry. Like I told you, man, if I gotta come stand outside of Bethel on Saturday to make sure y'all are safe, I'm gonna do that.
God bless you.
I'm a former dude from the east side of the church. I was a drug dealer and do you know what kind of combination that is?
It's a beautiful combination.
I know some people. I know some
Because
people.
you know what?
Know some people.
Because you know what? It's what made you. It's what made you.
Absolutely.
Right? It's all.
Absolutely.
And I want to know. I mean, you know this, but I want to stand with you, and we want to stand together, and do it the right way.
We had a moment in the hotel, we were talking, and man, we spent so many moments together that I would cherish for the rest of my life. But we were joking in the hotel room, and we were talking about the racism in America, and we were talking about some of the tragedies and atrocities that have happened against African Americans. And jokingly, you said, man, if they come to get you, they gotta come through me.
I mean, this is also my Israeli friends. They need more help, but we'll do whatever we can.
Right.
No, I meant it. You know.
And I know you did, man. And again, man, just thank you for sharing. And thank you for us talking. As we were walking through Jerusalem, you started talking about your friend Joe. And you said, man, whenever I like somebody, things don't work out well. When I have a friend, they end up dying. You said, you better make sure that you want to be my friend. Because you may end up dying. That's what you told me.
Jesus.
To die being your friend would be the greatest honor. And to die being your brother would be the greatest honor. So I would run that risk. And to be your friend would be a privilege. Man, we shared some great moments. We shared some tense moments. We had the privilege of teaching together, which brought about what I would call a mighty move for God. Something about when we work together, something supernatural happens. I'm believing that for our sake. And I'm believing that as we work together, something supernatural is going to happen in this city. And so I brought you here because I wanted to publicly commit in front of the people that I serve with my life. It was a few years ago that after service, standing in the back of my church talking to some of the people, that I had a stroke. And I always live in the shadow of that, and what it takes for me to do what I do. But I wanted to bring you here today as my brother to commit to the people who I give my life to serve, that with the same selfless, sacrificial way that I serve them, that I commit to serving what's in your heart. Your heart is beautiful. I watched it, and your love for humanity, your love for all people is something that I want to say to you, whatever you do. Like we kept laughing through Jerusalem. You kept saying, stay with your wingman. I said, dude, with Ruth and Naomi, wherever you go, I go. Your people will be my people.
I have these nightmares. Pastor gets lost. Never coming back. I was going to be with you.
So, okay, we got 1 minute, one last detail. It's the only other man I've ever slept in the bed with.
You really said that, didn't you?
I gotta tell this
That's
story.
more than you needed to know.
I gotta tell this story in case he has blackmail
40
pictures.
seconds.
40 seconds. I got 40 seconds to tell this story in case he's got blackmail pictures. So all while we're there, we're staying in 5-star hotels, right? And then we go to our last site, and we're in a 5-star hotel, and we walk in the room, and there are 2 beds, but they're together. I'm like, dude, what are we gonna do with this? He like, man, you gonna get on one side, I'm gonna get on the other side. I'm like, bruh, I like you, but not like that, man. Carla's gonna have a real problem with this. And so, needless to say, we had to go to sleep. So we got on one side, I got on the other side. And when we got back, I saw Jen, and I said, Jennifer, I gotta write you a check. She's like, huh? I said, I owe you. All humanity owes you. Your husband snores and talks in his sleep. However you've been dealing with that, somebody needs to pay you for your sacrifice and suffering.
I said he was a good man, but hold on for a second.
Tell the truth and shame the devil.
The truth, you snore too.
Dude, not like you. At one point, I thought,
Tell the truth.
oh man, Jen, he talks in his sleep. I'm like, who's in the room with us? I woke up like, whoa, who's in here? Like, dude,
I thought somebody was coming in.
you were ready, man. You were ready. I want to do this, man, and I want to end, and I want to say to you, and I want to say to Dr. Goodman, I love both of you. Again, you're gifts given to me by God, and I'm grateful for you. You're literally a lifeline. And you invited me and my family into your home and into your life, and I'm grateful for that. I don't know if this is out of order, but it would be so beautiful if you could just pray over us in Hebrew. And so if you could do us the honor and just pray over this house, I truly appreciate it.
So God has given us words of blessing. We're told in the book of Numbers, in Hebrew, Bamidbar, I say this to you, I say this to the River Church, to this whole community, to everyone gathered here today. Yivarechecha Adonai v'yishmerecha. May God bless you, bless all of us, and keep us. Ya'er Adonai panav elecha v'chuneka. May God shine light on us and be gracious with us. Yisa Adonai panav elecha v'yasem lecha shalom. May God lift up God's face to us. And when we see that face, may we be given peace person.